Hi, everyone. My name is Dee Tran, a business banking relationship manager here at Bank America. And I'm excited to introduce our three panelists today for our roundtable. Topics from traditional lean today to digital lean tomorrow. And I did have the pleasure to attend these panelist sessions before, and I think all of you are in for a great treat today. So our first panelist is Rich Roger. Rich is the co-founder and CEO of Zamigo, a Seattle-based smart manufacturing software company. And prior to founding Zamigo, Rich spent 12 years at Hitachi, most recently driving the industry 4.0 visions and strategies and emerging with Fortune 500 companies and leading edge solutions. Rich was also recently named one of the top 40 IoT leaders by Accenture. Our next panelist is Ben Marsh, CEO of Scout System, and a manufacturing software company that supplies machine learning, human and process solutions to manufacturers. The technologies increases plant productivity, reduces defects, and includes an interface that reduces worker training times. And before Scout System, Ben held a number of manufacturing, mechanical, and application engineering roles, including Red Dot Seattle, Cascade Engine Center, and VaporCore. His bachelor's degree is in mechanical engineering from Santa Clara University, and he has earned a black belt in Lean Six Sigma. And our third panelist is Marco Micheletti, the automation director at Fresh, bringing over 20 years of experience in managing engineering teams. Throughout his career, he has led teams shipping iconic innovators such as with companies such as Val and Microsoft. And Marcos has driven automation, product development, supply chain, and manufacturing for products including Xbox 360, Nike GPS watch and field band, Steam controller, and Steam VR kits. And he brings a deep expertise and leadership in high-value automation, advanced manufacturing, and autonomous vehicle solutions. And Marco holds a BS in mechanical engineering from the University of Washington. And now I'll hand the call over to our moderator, Elizabeth Harris.
Great. Thanks very much, Dee. Great to see everybody today. I'm Elizabeth Harris, and in my day job, I provide fractional chief revenue officer services for B2B companies, helping them grow profitable revenue by addressing their strategy, sales, and marketing needs. In my other job, which is being a member of CAMPS, I've been a member for several years now. I am a board member, the chair of the events committee, and I'm also, as Dee and Kirk have mentioned, the moderator of our panel discussion today. CAMPS has been focused on innovation and Industry 4.0 for the past few years, and through our annual conference, as well as other events, we provide our members access to the tools and resources they need to propel their companies forward. Today is no exception. The purpose of today's panel is to answer questions around digital lean. What is it? Why is it important? What does it look like? And how do I get it? We're going to spend the next 30 to 40 minutes hearing from our panelists and get their perspectives on digital lean. Then we're going to have time for Q&A at the end. In the meantime, please use the chat if you have any questions. I'll be keeping an eye on it, so if there's anything that's immediately relevant, we'll try and answer them as we go. Otherwise, we're going to hang on to them until the end. So, enough for the overview. Let's get started. Rich, I'd like to start with you for this first question. Then we'll get some other insights from Ben and Marco. Why is digital lean important?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I mean, I start by looking, like, why is lean important, right? When you think about it, lean manufacturing, to me, lean manufacturing, sort of really transformed or disrupted, manufacturing last century. As everyone knows, it's all about eliminating waste, throughout the process and throughout the operation. And as we saw, it completely disrupted industries. It completely disrupted regions of the country when you think about it. The whole auto industry was disrupted. You look at what happened to Detroit, because they weren't sort of following lean manufacturing best practices. And so again, these have been revolutionary. But I think anyone that's actually practicing lean today, you're probably starting to bump up against like the point of diminishing returns. You're implementing all these best practices. and you're doing a lot of manual sort of measuring of things, and basically trying to brainstorm on how to get rid of that last piece of waste and so forth. Anyways, when I think of digital lean, it's really sort of taking a step back and looking at digital, or looking at lean through like a software lens, or digital lens. And when you think about that, we've been to a bunch of factories, where we see people with stopwatches, sort of recording people in terms of like how long it takes to do a certain activity. We see people moving Kanban cards, from one bin to another, to signal, that we need to reorder, a certain piece of inventory. And again, if you take a step back, software can help with all that, right? And so to me, digital lean will really allow manufacturers to get to like a whole nother level of productivity and operational efficiency. Again, by looking at things through software, I would say.
Excellent. Ben, Marco, you have anything you want to add to that?
Absolutely. It's important, regardless of the name you give it, essentially, we need to be more efficient and take advantage of the resources that we have within our factories. And so, like Rich just really said, well, taking a look at manufacturing through a digital lens, digital lean just is a way to give us the tools on how we can, exploit the resources we have to be more efficient and exploit them in the positive ways. We're trying to be more efficient in how we learn, how we operate on day to day, and how do we make improvements to just, continue to keep up.
So if it's lean to the next level, the next digital level, Ben, in addition to adding on, maybe you can give us some thoughts about what does it look like? I mean, it sounds wonderful. We all want and need it. What does it look like?
Okay, so it's very similar. It's virtually identical to everything that lean is attempting to do. So you're not changing the course of your transformation journey. You are just adding in tools that make it far more efficient. Everything that is manual about lean goes away. Like we've talked about the clipboards and the stopwatches, that goes away. The paperwork travelers, the Pareto diagrams, all those things that you have, I would say that there's two buckets. There's things that you no longer have to do anymore, and then there's automation that you get. So everything that's manual associated with lean goes away, which is great. And what you get is you get 100% visibility. Whereas with a lot of lean projects, you do an event. You go out there and you spend a couple hours or a day with a group of people, and you have one sample size, and you run that, and then you do your analysis from there. Or you might have a couple analysis points. So what you get with digital lean is you get 100% visibility 24/7, 365 days a week. So you go away from all the manual stuff, and then your case size just, it explodes.
Excellent. It's interesting to me from your different points of view, Ben being focused on AI at Scout Systems, and Rich really into data collection and AI at Zemelgo, and Marco, really, thank you for the picture, in robotics, at Fresh Consulting, how you're all in agreement about this, that this is the next thing and it needs to be done. Anything else you want to share about what it might look like?
I would just say, again, to me, like the focus of lean is really eliminating waste. When you think about it, there's those 8 wastes, and people are religious, about getting rid of those. And to me, it's like fascinating. But I think that there's like a whole new level of waste emerging, like with data entry. And it could be barcode scanning, it could be manual data entry. If leaders were to walk their floor, you'd be amazed at how much time is lost or wasted, just barcode scanning or fiddling with software or manually typing stuff in. And so for me, I think, again, like you were saying, like sensors and data collection and automating a lot of that, that is the next biggest waste, to drive out of a lot of our operations today, I would say, is all that manual data entry.
To add on that, I think that there's, I had some opportunities to develop, a digital data collection across an entire facility. And when you're building an entire factory and you know that it's going to be automated and you know it's going to be instrumented, the danger in the air is to collect data from all the points. And I can tell you that we didn't know which ones were going to be most informative and most insightful, but we were collecting somewhere on the order of about 100,000 instrumented points, and then collecting multiple times a second. So when Rich talks about digital waste, that's what we're talking about. You have all this data, and you're overwhelmed by it, and you're not sure what to make of it, or where the signals are going to lie in the noise. And now we have a lot of tools like Ben is talking about, or you mentioned AI and reinforcement learning, and how we can help refine and draw correlations to the signals that are important. But it doesn't have to, you don't have to start that way. And I know that we're going to talk about how to get into this. But it might be more impactful to just think about instrumenting and collecting data on one small process and see how it works, and really narrow in on what the data points and metrics in your process are that are really going to matter, versus taking the casting the wide net.
Something I would like to add on that one too is we have a relatively new customer that I was just doing a training with them last week. And traditional or analog styles of lean, when you have data collection stored, they would have let's say a Pareto diagram. These are our top hitters of process waste that we have in our facility. And so let's arbitrarily say that missing materials is taking up 75% of their problem. So if this was your organization, if you had a 75% problem, you might look at it as a decision maker and say, okay, we clearly need to have a big machine or something that can go in place. This is a big problem because there's a big amount of waste. But when you have digital platforms in place, you might find out that this is not a 4-hour downtime, an 8-hour downtime. It might be slivers of instances that just happen 10 times an hour. And when you have these, the tools that you need to implement are very different to avoid a 4-hour downtime versus a 4-minute downtime. And so to be able to very easily run a query and say, what is my biggest problem? And what is the frequency of this? And what is the latency of the solution? It gives you a new insight to this problem of missing materials. Maybe you need a conveyor belt system, or maybe you need to have active water spiders, or maybe you just need to have a simpler Kanban setup. All of these things become very obvious when you start to have clean data, and now you're skipping all of the manual collection, all the manual entry, all the manual analysis. You're just simply asking the question, where is my problem? And it just gives it to you. It's quite easy.
So let's jump in at that point and take it a step further. You each have your different perspectives, as I mentioned earlier. Can you share with us a story of how you have implemented, each of you, how you've implemented digital lean, what it looks like, how the implementation has gone, and what the results have been? And I'll kind of open it up, whoever wants to go first.
I'm happy to continue on the example. We built a factory about 5 years ago, and it was fully automated assembly system. So it was taking on maybe the implementation was a bit ambitious, but it was the situation we were in. And so we were a lean team to begin with. It was a small engineering development team of, essentially about 10 people that were running engineering development, manufacturing operations, supply chain, and responsible for this factory site, which was 3,000 miles away from our headquarters. And, the goal and the intent was to get the system up and running so that we could have digital dashboards and come in the morning or come check throughout the day to see how the operation was running, whether it was Pareto's, throughputs, just basic metrics. And so the implementation was tough, but we did get to that point, and we got, we'd always have particular trouble areas and processes that were difficult, and we were struggling to understand which parameters would really would be the right ones to come and adjust. But we did get to that position, and it got to the point where we could come in at 8 o'clock in the morning, pull the data from the day before, look at the Pareto's types of errors, and then actually drill into images of the processes and see where the processes may have shifted. And we could, by 9 o'clock, call the factory and say, hey, I think you need to move the nests over 2/1000ths of an inch, or change something in the process parameters. And we could see this through the data versus in a much quicker way than the people who were on the line watching the parts go by, because they were looking at it in real time. They weren't looking at the data in aggregate. And so it got to be a really powerful, we could be more reactive from being remote by having the data and the tool sets and great dashboards and next level ability to look into the steps and individual cases. It got to be a really powerful tool for us.
That's
on our side. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I was just going to say the size of that move is so small, and the impact. And
there were situations where we had literally adjustments that are on that order that we could see, the process from the day before just got adjusted, or variations in the product that we could make adjustments on the fly and bring everything back into center. And it was great because we went from living in Chicago to going there every other week to every 2 weeks to not having to go except once a month to check in and just see how everything was going.
Very good. Rich, you were saying?
No, I was going to chime in, but I mean, that is fascinating. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, the fact that you can move something, 2/1000ths of an inch or whatever, it's just amazing. On the Zemelgo side, so, our focus has really been like very simple sort of co-created solutions, with manufacturers. And what that means is, we work with them. We ask, where is your greatest pain point or opportunity? And then we sort of combine, cloud software, sensors and a mobile app to very quickly sort of give them the solution that they're looking for, right? And so we, our very first customer was Key Compounding Pharmacy, obviously a CAMPS member. They had an inventory issue, where they were just running out of stuff pretty regularly. Their ordering was very reactive. They'd run out of something, they'd order, 2 days later, run out of something else. And so, and they were using the Kanban cart system, right? And so when the users or the workers were consuming inventory, they'd have to look to see if it was the last item. If it was, they'd move a card, from one bin to another. And then later that day, the inventory manager would take a lap around the building and pick up the cards and order stuff. But as you guys know, everyone's racing around. People are racing in there, they're grabbing inventory. They're not moving the card. If they do move the card, maybe the inventory manager left early that day. And so it was absolutely breaking down for them. And so, we very quickly, in the matter of just a few hours, sort of gave them some Wi-Fi enabled sensors. We started to tag, some of their inventory items. We allowed them to download the app on their phone. And then we just started alerting them, when they run low on stuff, right? And then from there, we started to build them a shopping cart, right? And so making recommendations on what to reorder, based on their time horizon. And so again, very, very quickly, came together with a solution, that sort of solved a big pain point for them, right? And allowed them to be more efficient, with their team members. And again, that's small. We're also working with other companies like Sekisui Aerospace in building almost like a paperless factory for them. And this is like a 3 or 4 year journey, where they're working to eliminate, paperwork, from their operational process. And so again, tagging things with RFID and then tracking it, from raw material, into parts, into WIP, into finished goods inventory, and even shipping out the door, right? And so giving them that complete end-to-end visibility, again, on their mobile device, 24/7, 365, from anywhere in the world. And so I'd say that's sort of both ends of the spectrum, the very simple and sort of the more complex. We're also working with companies like Volvo. Volvo was losing $1 million a year in tools disappearing, from their factories. And so people were throwing in their backpacks and walking out the door. And so we have a very simple loss prevention, sort of solution for asset tracking, where we can geofence, a tool. And if that tool's moved from its home base, people are getting alerts on their phone. Or if it's detected at the exit, you can get an alert. We had another customer that was losing 1.5 million per year in chemicals that were expiring throughout their campus. And so they had a very massive campus with chemicals spread out everywhere. And these chemicals are in the corners and no one even knows they're there. And when they look at them now, they've been expired 6 months. And so with Zemelgo, we can alert them, the chemicals, in the far right are about to expire. You might want to move those over to this other area, where they're more apt to get used rather than scrapped, right? And so that's basically helping them get ahead of some of that stuff. We also track shipments. And so working with the company ASCO or ColorTech, being able to track work orders that flow between their facilities, right? And so making sure that work orders are getting to the right facility and not dropped off at the wrong facility. And so if something gets dropped off the wrong facility, again, everyone gets an alert on their phone so they can be made aware, that needs to be, rerouted, over to the right spot. But again, I would say the biggest thing is co-creation, right? And we love the engagement, we love again, the collaboration, working side by side, to bring some of these things to life. And we always recommend start small, right? I mean, this is a journey, right? This is a 5-year, 10-year journey, a 15-year journey. You shouldn't try to, come up with the complete answer to everything. You should really just start with really the most basic use case, right? Because from there, you're going to learn about the technology, you're going to learn about what's possible. You're going to learn a whole lot, right? And all those learnings can be applied, throughout that journey as you move forward. And so I would always say, just be pragmatic and start small.
So I'm curious, Rich, the tool losses for Volvo, those are pretty easy to quantify and they're very obvious, but when you talk about key compounding and that kind of an impact that you had on their system, can you speak just in general terms to the results that were achieved?
Yeah, so with key compounding in particular, and it'd be great to have them on someday, and they could tell the story even better than I can. But when you get into that very reactive inventory ordering, you're starting to pay overnight fees, to get things there tomorrow, because you can't allow your production schedule to be impacted, right? Where now your things are shipping out late to customers. And so again, we were able to eliminate all of the overnight fees, like almost entirely. And then again, the worker that has to go in there and cycle count things, the worker that has to go in there and barcode scan, 1,000 items, right? I mean, nobody wants to do that, right? And again, I don't think that as leaders, we recognize the burden that we're putting on our team, to manually, write down stuff on a clipboard and then walk over to the computer and type it all in. This is tremendous waste, like tremendous waste. And I mean, if you can, if your competitors eliminate that waste and you're still doing that, you are going to be in a really tough situation in a few years. But anyways, for key compounding, again, eliminating all the overnight fees, again, smoothing out their ordering and sort of getting an employee back, I think was a big win for them. And again, this is a solution for them that's just a couple $100s a month. I know when people think Industry 4.0, it's 6 figures, 7 figures, 8 figures. Again, they're paying a few $100s a month, for the solution.
To get an employee back, that's huge.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you. So Ben, what about you? What kind of a story can you share with us?
Certainly. So with the approach that we target, some of the deliverables that people will see will be a training time reduction, 50 to 60%, capacity increases by 10 to 25%, and machine utilization up 5 to 10% most commonly. But what we discovered, especially with the COVID year, was we really retooled the way that we help manufacturers learn how to implement this technology. Every manufacturer is different, but the same. Everybody has the same labor issues, the same material issues, the same waste issues, but just their processes are always a little bit different. So what we designed was a 90-day deployment. And in the 90 days, our target is to get an ROI. And now for each customer, it could be a different target point. But like any good scientific study, the first thing we want to do is have your baseline control. So we deploy our system, and within the very first day that we deploy it, you start to get data, and the system is self-learning. So it starts to analyze your OEE, and it's able to calculate your efficiency of your factory out the gate. And so within 30 days, what we like to do is we have a meeting with our customers, and we look at their production. We look at their waste, we look at their gaps, we look at their utilization, and we just basically ask the question, does this data align with what you thought your factory was? And then that's a really big aha moment. Because when you think you're at 65% OEE, but the reality is that you're at 40, you start to realize that there's waste that you've never even measured. When you take a look at a production schedule and you see 15-minute gaps in between every single job, you start to realize that your operators have to do a lot more in between tasks that then you even understand. So the first thing we like to do is to digitally map. You create that digital twin. This is what your factory is. And now you could zoom in and see everything. And then the question we like to say is, what can you do differently in the next month? And so we work with customers to figure out, well, what is the thing that you realized about your factory that you didn't know? And once you realize that, what would you like to do? We're not necessarily the solution. We're just the visibility, and we can then give you the tools to make the solution. So that's one thing that's a little bit different between, in my opinion, with the digital lean versus robots. When in robots in the physical world, you're using it to actually build something. Whereas in digital lean, we're providing you the tools and the insight and the information that you can begin to put systems in place to perfect it. And then usually by that third month, you have visible clarity, you've implemented your own project, and now you can measure and you see those changes. Most companies within 3 months, it's an easy thing. And like Rich said, you're talking about hundreds of dollars, and you're realizing that you could boost your capacity by 10%. And that's not at the station. If you implement this technology, it is often something that's going to be universal amongst every station. The paperwork that you do is often done at every station. So that's waste that you have everywhere. Everybody is looking for materials. Everybody needs to have a first article inspection. All of these things that you do, it just gives you more and more opportunities to go, didn't realize that we lost 5% of our day to this. How do we improve the way that we do our first articles? And if you can go from 5% to 2.5%, well, you just gained 2.5% of an employee across the board. So there's little things like that you could do. I can't tell you exactly what I would do, and I can give you stories of how we've done this dozens and dozens of times, but it might not be exactly relatable. The thing that is the most easy way to take away is you see and you learn so much more. I have never, ever had a customer that said, I knew all of that. Every time that we give them this data, they are often very surprised by what we're able to find out.
That's a great
The
point.
data doesn't lie.
It does not.
Or it helps clarify perceptions, yes.
So it sounds like digital lean, the application of digital tools on top of your lean processes are the thing to do. However, like any great, bright, new, shiny object, there must be downsides. What are the reasons to think twice about digital lean, or what are the downsides around digital lean?
I would start again a little bit and say, the approach that we had in going all in is really ambitious, and it's really hard to do. I want to echo what Rich had previously said and say, starting small, getting familiar not only with the tools but the process, so that you're building it as a muscle for your organization and can roll it out and see the benefits more clearly and understand where to apply it. I would just say that rolling it out on such a large scale, we had a large investment. We had a whole development team. There's always issues with how you manage that change into the factory and the manufacturing floor environment. You're changing the way people work, and so it's a new thing. It needs to be adopted, and how you need to educate the staff on how to take advantage of it. And some folks just want to continue doing things the way that they're used to, or the way that they know that it's worked for them in the past. So there's definitely a lot of change management that needs to happen in education to get it to be adopted and for it to be valuable. So and then also there's a lot of waste. It was a lot of infrastructure, and it took us quite a bit of time to get the noise signals down low enough so that we could see and identify where the key points were that we wanted to dig into. And it took some time. It was hard. It was not simple. It took really concerted effort. And all the time we were focusing in on the system and the dashboard and the data was time that we couldn't spend to increasing quality in other areas, or teaching or educating, or just improving our system in other places. And so it was a large effort.
So being focused in your effort is probably a
small.
Good best practice. Yes.
I think start small, be focused. Like I said, pick the one pain point. That's a great case study to build upon.
Other downsides, other considerations to be wary of.
Yeah, so for me, so I wouldn't say there are downsides, but there are pitfalls. I think that's probably a better way
word.
At least from my perspective. and I would say there's been a lot of false starts in the space. Again, I came out of Hitachi. We had, a couple hundred engineers like on this. And we were building what we thought would be amazing, and we were taking, our 20 years of software experience and trying to jam it into manufacturing, without actually, talking to manufacturers and learning, what they're even looking for or even what they're capable of deploying. And so again, I think the pitfalls are, stay away from the platforms, that require a tremendous amount of like custom integration and professional services. Again, if the vendor can't get you up and running in a few days or a few weeks, that's probably a sign that this is going to be a very expensive, sort of a war, that you'll have to fight essentially in your factory. Again, this stuff, it should be simple, right? And it should be as simple as an app on your phone. When you use Google Maps, you just download the app, and it starts working, right? And there's no reason that Industry 4.0 or digital lean, can't be the same way. Again, I would start pragmatic, and the goal of your first project should be to learn, right? Let's get a little bit of value, but let's get a lot of learning, right? And let's find a partner that we can collaborate with. Let's find someone that has some expertise that we can then sort of tap into and apply. And again, that's what we love about Zemelga, the co-creation process, is we sort of bring the technology expertise and the manufacturer brings the domain expertise. And then together, we come up with a solution for them. And again, from there we learn, right? And then it becomes that journey that we're working on together. And so again, I would just say the pitfalls are, beware of the witch doctors, that are selling, these really super expensive platforms, that require a tremendous amount of customization, and avoid trying to boil the ocean. Again, start with something pragmatic.
I'd like to throw in on that another thing you must do. I agree with both you guys on those. But the other one you need to recognize is that it's going to require change. You're going to discover that everything that you do, quite literally, everything that you do is probably wrong and there's room for improvement. And one thing that I've seen where companies will have issues is, let's say the manufacturing engineering team is pushing really hard for digitalization, but the quality team does not. They want to keep their paperwork. They want to keep their binders. And if you do not have that synergy, and if you do not have senior leadership that's saying digital beats analog 10x, 20x every single time, you need to recognize that even though this process that you have that has been working for 40 years, you're going to need to disrupt it eventually. And not yet. You could start small and you could definitely ease into it, but you would be incorrect in thinking that this is only going to go so far and stop. Because as soon as you go digital, you're going to be able to link every single department, every single action, and you're going to be able to have all of that information available to be married. And it's going to be able to give you new dashboards, new reports, better understanding of everything. All that data entry, in the future, you'll be able to have your ERP dictating exactly what needs to be done on the floor, and your digital platforms will be able to help execute it. And then as things are done, it's going to be able to stream right back to your ERP, and there's going to be no people in the middle that's going to need to do any handshake of data. So you'll be able to future connect that to robots, into additional sensors. The sky is the limit. And so when you're taking these projects, do not just look at this as we want to fix one thing and that's all we ever want to fix. You need to recognize that when you start to put these things into place, you need to be open-minded that more is going to want to be adjusted. And if you have people in your departments that are very diehard on the old systems in place, you're probably going to have some personnel issues inside your organization. This should be something that everybody, just like lean, you got to have the whole entire organization agree that this is the future where we're going. Digital is the exact same.
That's right. Executive sponsorship and change management in anything and related to manufacturing and digital transformation is just critical and key.
Absolutely. Yeah, Ben's drawing up some memories for me too. I mean, I think the other thing I would say is feel free to push, your provider, right? And so, yeah, we're working right now with some very demanding customers that are saying like, we want this, and one thing they're looking at is labor tracking, right? So they want to be able to track all of the work, that goes into building the products. And they've asked us to build them a smart basket. And the worker just puts the paperwork in the basket. And that means that we start the clock. And when they're done, they take the paperwork out of the basket. And they want us to make it like that simple, for their team. They don't want their engineers, typing into tablets or barcode scanning. They just want to basically put it in there to start the clock, pull it out to stop the clock. And again, it's fascinating because that's going to get them, again, all of the labor that goes into building the parts, for their customers. And so, yeah, it's great to be pushed by manufacturers that know exactly what they want, I would say.
Well, it sounds also like by starting small, not only do you gain learnings by doing something very focused, you also have an opportunity to get some results, achieve some ROI without a huge investment, that in turn you should be able to leverage and move on throughout your plant. Is that the case? Or have I just made up the ideal?
I mean, I would say yes, right? Coming out of engineering, a lot of my career, there's the whole concept of vision, strategy, roadmap, right? And that's why we love working with Sekisui, quite honestly. Sekisui used to be AIM Aerospace, it's now Sekisui. But yeah, they have a 5-year vision, and they have a strategy, strategy for this year, which is sort of how they're going to, progress along that vision. And then the execution, right? And so, yeah, so I agree with you. Yeah, you need a vision, you need a strategy, you need people, sort of driving things to make sure you're executing at the right pace and so forth. Yeah, without that, yeah, you're going to end up in the weeds probably.
And it's nice particularly for manufacturers who are just getting started, that you don't have to make a tens of thousands of dollars investment into something to get started, which is
the tool sets evolved and the costs have come down, and cloud-based solutions are fantastic. We're just like, I'd gladly pay Ben or Rich hundreds of dollars to instrument what we did. We spent hundreds of thousands of dollars just on the servers. It was expensive, and it was, we're right at the transition of all these tools coming online. So the ecosystem of what can be done and for what price is flipped on its head. It's great these days.
That's amazing.
Which is great. So where within a manufacturer does this initiative start? Who's the right person to start this?
I think that depending on what you're trying to accomplish, I think the departments that need to be involved very heavily would be your IT department with your manufacturing engineering department, or at least your ops people. Those are 3 people that would be very useful for this. Most projects that we see from Scout will fall in the manufacturing engineering department, but the IT department, you definitely want to keep them involved, because as you start to have a multitude of platforms that you're putting in there, they're going to want to sync those up. And something you should understand too about the digital lean or the IoT movement, it's very similar to the manufacturing department or the industry, where here you got 3 different individuals that are all representing this industry. We're all very different. So there is an opportunity that you would have 2 or 3 platforms that would be able to accomplish everything that you're trying to do. So I think understanding your vision, what are you trying to get to? What are some problems that you really want to focus on? Once you find the right organization that you're going to work with, that's probably going to steer you in the right direction of which group and which departments inside your organization should be the most involved.
Are there other next steps that people should take as they consider? And then we're going to break out for questions.
Well, I mean, as an innovation committee, and again, Parker's done amazing, pulling the innovation committee together, and we meet regularly and we have subcommittees. As we've discussed, we'd really like to do some visits, right? So if there's anyone on this call, that's interested in a visit by the Camp's Innovation Committee, we want to start to inventory, where manufacturers are at, what they're looking for, so that we can make sure we're investing like in the right sort of knowledge, that we can bring, to the community and share with the community, the right solutions, right best practices, the right lessons learned. And so, yeah, I think that's the big ask right now, I think, is some face-to-face factory tours, and sort of like a workshop, an Industry 4.0 workshop where we sit down, Marco, Ben, myself, and just sort of inventory where manufacturers are at, and maybe, brainstorm on some different paths forward.
So the opportunity for a site visit. Marco, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, and sitting down and just looking at operations is great. Going back to who should be involved as well, I'll just reiterate one more time that the executive leadership is important to have the sponsorship. They don't have to be involved in the day-to-day, but I've seen, manufacturing initiatives fail because someone had a great idea but didn't have the support, or there was leadership support, but you didn't have team buy-in. And so you need to have that, that mindset that we are going to make changes, we are going to be better, we're going, it's that learning mindset, and it needs to permeate the organization from the top down. Otherwise, it just isn't going to, you won't see it all the way through to get the benefits.
Absolutely.
Makes
the
sense.
other thing I want to chime in on that one, because I didn't really sort of touch on it, but like Marco's right, you need the executive support. And the truth is, like, the executives need to wake up. Like, they really, honestly, they need to wake up to this digital lean, sort of approach. And if for anything, just for retention and recruiting, like, quite honestly, your workers want this. If you want to attract top talent, you need to start using this stuff. Otherwise people will start. And again, I hate to, it's not like a threat, it's just reality. Yeah, people will start leaving, and you're gonna have a really hard time getting the best of the best, to join your company if you don't have these projects, that are happening. Like, again, quite honestly.
It's an opportunity for the people to learn and impact your business in a positive way.
Yep.
Wonderful. Marco, Ben, Rich, thank you so very much for all of your thoughts and insights into digital lean. We are going to open it up for questions from our audience now. If you have a question, feel free to unmute yourself. Randy, you have a question. Thanks for raising your hand.
I had lots of comments or end questions as this was going along, but I, at this point in time, I think there's been a lot of information passed on, and I want to underline a couple of the points, which was as it relates to upper management, which I was in, and I was very passionate about it. In fact, some of you may recall the lean sensei that I hired. He would only take us on if I did everything he said.
Wow.
We were at a point where I had to say, yeah, okay. But what you as a leader, and we have a lot of leaders in this meeting, what you underestimate is the impact of trying to change people's habits. And I think all you guys that tried to implement these things have run into the brick wall or the passive aggressive or that is just, you're going to have to root out some of that as a leader. And the leaders almost always like to see the blue skies, but just underneath there's a lot of pick and shovel work that you got to do with people and trying to, get them on board. And it isn't just as easy as putting in these things. The knock-on effect that happens to so many people and departments by a simple change causes all kinds of disruptions, because even the smallest department will be underwater doing a special project, and they don't have time to pay attention to this without an executive giving them some room or some help. So as an executive leader, they just can't be spectators. They actually have to get in and direct traffic.
Mm.
So I have another question that I got by me earlier. When you think about the investment that a company makes, it's not only money and attention, it's time. How much, and I know this is kind of the it depends question, but how much time should a small digital lean effort, what should a manufacturer expect?
Forever.
I could answer this one for at least with Scout. So like I was mentioned briefly before, we have this deployment that we've been really working to master. And we have found that in a 90-day period, we require about 30 hours total. So if there's 2 champions on the project, it's about 15 hours each. But from that 0 to 90 period, our target is to get to an ROI. We're not sure what the ROI is going to encompass just yet, because we like to first get that baseline of data. But we do provide training procedures, and we also provide worksheets and basically a schedule. So 2 hours a week for this week and then the next week, and we want to get these things dialed in. But it's our intent, and I think Rich said it before too, like you shouldn't be concerned about a platform consuming your life, it's not like an ERP project where you have to restructure everything. You should be finding something that is going to be a near bolt-on application, that the disruption is going to be minimal. The disruption should be more positive, where you're discovering things and you're seeing benefits more rapidly. It is a surprisingly easy project to implement when you do it correctly.
Yeah, I mean, it's an algo. Our focus is really to be almost invisible, right? And so, yeah, every deployment we've done has been half a day, right? And so, yeah, we use a lot of smart sort of home type, sensors. Again, we're an app on your phone. As Marco said, we run in the cloud. And so, and again, the customers, they always schedule like a day and a half, and then we're done by lunch, on the first day, and they're shocked, right? And that includes even the training, the training for the application. Yeah, so yeah, we did a deployment at ATI Metals down in Portland. Same thing. They basically scheduled a day and a half. We were done by lunch. And yeah, for us, again, we have a lot of engineers, 15 engineers on the team that are eating, sleeping, breathing the software, again, to make it simple for the customer, like, quite honestly. And so, yeah, again, this stuff can be pretty painless.
So when you talk about that, hang on one second, Randy, I want to have a follow-up question. When you talk about that day and a half and you're done by lunch, that's the deployment. What about the time required from the manufacturer prior to the deployment?
I mean, that's a good question. I think, I mean, there's a few meetings here and there. I mean, our playbook is a phone call where we introduce an algo. After, if they're still interested, we do a 1 hour, sort of PowerPoint and a demo, similar that we've done here, even on camps. And then after that, we schedule it, and
right.
And, a lot of them, it's 4 or 5 readers or sensors that get deployed. Again, there's no software that gets deployed on site, right? And so, yeah, it's just very, very simple, like, quite honestly.
Great.
Yep.
Okay. So it can be a very small lift all the way up to a full factory implementation. And Marco, I bet that took months, if not years.
Yes, I'm not one to speak on how the fastest way to deploy, for sure. I'm happy to hear how painless and simple it is these days.
Randy, yes.
I just want to put another plug in for the snowball. And early wins, early small wins builds confidence and momentum. So if you try to go for the home run and you fail, I mean, the recovery from that is almost unrecoverable. So going for the small wins and building momentum and getting people the positive mojo going is really important in this type of organizational change. So go for the snowball. Small wins first.
I will agree with that 100%. When we bring on new clients and they are interested in starting in their bottleneck, that usually throws up red flags, because your operators are already stressed, your projects are already backlogged, and your bottleneck is already hurting terribly. So to add change to your bottleneck, that's a rough one, where if you go with the win, take those resources from your win and then supply it to your bottleneck to make their life a little bit easier, that's a usually much safer strategy.
And I assume that there's a certain part of this process that you recommend to people that includes communicating and celebrating the wins.
Oh yeah, so with us, we study everything, your machines, your operators, and your operations. So we could tell you which operators are the best performing, which ones are the worst performing. And we always recommend lead by giving gift certificates to your best employees. Do not use this application to go get your employees in trouble that are underperforming, because now you are definitely making everybody feel like this is a big brother issue and not an operational improvement thing. But when you see operators that are going over and beyond to help teaching others and making sure that their data and what they're utilizing it for is done correctly, that's a wonderful employee to have. And as they use the systems correctly and you're discovering that there's complications that they're having, listen to them. If your operators are saying that we need to have bigger monitors so we can see dashboard displays inside our factory, listen to them, because they're trying to use the tools that you're employing to better improve the entire company. So when the people that are on the front lines are asking for assistance, that's usually the place you should be listening to the most, because that's just going to help accelerate this project.
One of the things that's most interesting to me is that we, everybody is worried about being replaced by robots and, that kind of thing. And in fact, we're making the technology serve the people, which is the way it should be. So.
Real quickly, I have an observation and a question. We talked about the difficulty sometimes that employees might throw up roadblocks because they, creatures of habit or routine, and they're used to doing something this way. But Ben, something you and I've talked about, and I just wonder everybody's opinion on this. A lot of times your technology, this digital lean, actually enables employees to be heard because, again, I think a lot of times they're trying to do the best with what they've got. But what's been our panel's experience with employees being heard because of the technology?
I love that one. So in my experience, you'll have employees that have complained about something is broken for years, and they complain about it for years, and it gets to the point where they're like, screw it, my management's not listening anymore, so I'm not even going to complain about it. And then that's when your morale starts to really decay. And so when employees have the opportunity to very easily either record a downtime or a problem, or if you have sensors that are recording the frequency of this, and now management can see, holy crap, we are losing $2,000 a week due to this issue. When that operator has been saying it for years, that has never been measured with dollars and cents. But now all of a sudden you could see this, and it makes it very easy to make that decision. We need to change our tool. We need to change our process. And when your operators start to see problems fall apart in front of them and they go away, now it's a lot easier to build a product. I have never met an operator who enjoys rework. I have never met an operator that is proud of a defect. It is their happy days are the days that everything goes right, because and not to knock on an operator, but to be able to check out and to have a conversation with your friends on the line is so much better than having to stop and being stressed out on a delivery time and making sure something's working. So getting rid of those issues, your operators start to realize that this tool is putting a dollar sign to our voice, and that usually helps boost morale.
Yep. On our side, yeah, operators love Zenelgo. Like one pain point is cycle counting or inventory audits, and those can take. We've seen customers shut down their whole factory for 2 days, to basically audit everything. And Zenelgo turns that into just a few minutes or just a few hours, right? And so yeah, the workers absolutely love it. It's giving them time back to focus on innovation, efficiency, quality, safety, and not doing, again, mind-numbing, task or activities.
This can be so powerful, and it usually is. When the employees start to be heard, the avalanche of ideas begins, and then you have to be ready to respond. So there has to be some protocol system that actually, prioritizes these things that come in, because the number of ideas that start rolling forward when they actually hear that you're going to make their job easier.
Yeah, that's right. We had some. Once we had made it through some of the change management issues, and we had the quality or the manufacturing engineers bought in, and then all of a sudden we noticed a little bit of a change where they were starting to come with us with, hey, we have these ideas, and they're being a little more proactive. And we kind of asked, like, where is this coming from? And they said, oh, well, the operator in this space and the operator in this space, like, they were really latching on into what the machine or what the data and the dashboards were telling them. And they had fantastic insights. And all of a sudden, like just Randy said, like, this happened. You would take an operator of 3 or 4 of them and you start moving them around, and they were really latching on to what the power of the system could do and the ideas. And all of a sudden, the insights and the feedback that they were bringing back was fantastic. And it had taken so long, but it just took a few key people to really it clicked for them, and it was great to see. Well, and I think it also created that snowball where it started to roll uphill to a degree as well.
So digital lean can be a real game changer. Thank you guys very much.